He stopped his horse when a hidden voice whispered, "Cowboy, don't turn around." Behind a roaring waterfall, one decision would test his honor, his courage, and his silence. What he protected that day was not gold, not land, but lives and a secret meant to survive. Stay till the end to uncover the truth. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more unforgettable frontier stories. The cowboy stopped his horse near the waterfall, drawn by the sound of rushing water echoing through the rocky canyon. Before he could turn, a quiet but firm voice reached him from behind the falling water, telling him not to look back. Instinctively, he obeyed. Years on the American frontier had taught him that some warnings carried more weight than commands. He stood still, eyes lowered, hand resting calmly on the saddle. The moment felt heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. He knew this was not a coincidence, but a test of character unfolding in silence. The air near the waterfall was cool, but tension lingered beneath it. Though he could not see her, the Apache woman's presence was unmistakable. Her voice carried strength shaped by survival, not fear. She explained that the waterfall concealed more than water. It guarded a sacred passage used by her people for generations. Soldiers had been searching nearby, pushing tribes from their land. The cowboy noticed signs around him: disturbed earth, snapped twigs, and distant hoof prints. These details told a story of pursuit and danger. He realized that turning around would mean betraying more than one life. He spoke slowly and respectfully, choosing his words with care. He promised he would not look, nor would he ask questions that could place her at further risk. At his words, her voice softened slightly. She told him she was the last to leave, remaining behind to protect the hidden route so others could escape safely. The responsibility she carried was enormous. Listening, the cowboy understood that this moment was larger than himself. It was not about sides or laws, but about protecting something fragile in a harsh and changing land. Behind the veil of water lay a narrow path nearly invisible to outsiders. The woman described how it led through the mountains to a safe valley beyond reach. The cowboy had seen many battles in his life, but this was a different kind of struggle, one fought without weapons. Quietly, he removed food and water from his saddlebag and placed them on the ground. It was a small gesture, yet it carried meaning. In that act, he acknowledged her humanity, her courage, and her right to survive. No words were needed to seal the understanding between them. The sound of approaching horses broke the stillness. The woman's voice dropped to a whisper as urgency filled the air. The cowboy's heart beat faster, but his expression remained calm. He knew the risk he was taking. Helping her could cost him his freedom or his life. Still, his choice was already made. The woman thanked him softly, not with emotion, but with trust. Moments later, she disappeared behind the mist, leaving nothing but falling water and silence in her place. Soon after, soldiers rode into view. Their questions were sharp, their eyes searching. The cowboy answered evenly, saying he had stopped only to water his horse and rest. His tone was steady, his gaze honest. He did not lie outright, but he did not reveal the truth either. There was a narrow line between truth and betrayal, and he walked it carefully. The soldiers, finding nothing suspicious, eventually moved on. As their hoofbeats faded, the land seemed to exhale once more. The cowboy remained by the waterfall for a while, listening. The sound of the water no longer felt ordinary. It carried the weight of what had just passed: fear, courage, and a secret preserved. He did not know where the Apache woman had gone, but he believed she would reach safety. Sometimes, he reflected, helping someone does not require action alone. Sometimes it means standing still, turning away and choosing silence over recognition. As the sun lowered behind the mountains, the cowboy mounted his horse and prepared to leave. A quiet heaviness settled in his chest, not regret, but responsibility. He understood that the true stories of the frontier were not always written in gunfire or glory. Many were shaped by unseen moments, by choices made when no one was watching. This was one of those moments, destined to remain unspoken yet deeply meaningful. Riding away, the words "don't turn around" echoed in his mind. They were more than a physical request. They were a moral line drawn in the dust. By respecting it, he had chosen honor over curiosity, humanity over indifference. He knew this decision would stay with him longer than any scar or memory of violence. It was a reminder that strength often shows itself in restraint. Years later, long removed from that land, the sound of rushing water would still return to him in quiet moments. He would remember the day, too. Strangers from different worlds trusted each other, without ever meeting face to face. In the vast and unforgiving American West, that silent agreement became a rare kind of victory. It proved that sometimes, the most powerful acts are the ones no one ever sees. The cowboy rode through the canyon long after, leaving the waterfall behind, but the encounter refused to leave his thoughts. Every sound felt sharper, every shadow heavier. He understood now that the land was changing, and not gently. The frontier was no longer just about survival against nature, but about choices between power and conscience. He kept riding until night fell, eventually stopping near a dry ridge where he made camp. As the fire crackled, his mind returned to the woman's voice. Calm, controlled, and full of quiet strength. He wondered if she had reached the valley safely or if danger still followed her through the darkness. At dawn, distant smoke caught his attention. It was not the steady smoke of a campfire, but scattered and uneven. Experience told him something was wrong. Against his better judgment, he followed the signs. Near a narrow pass, he found traces of a hurried movement, broken arrows, disturbed stones, and blood darkened by dust. The soldiers had returned, this time closer than before. The cowboy felt a tightening in his chest. The secret path was no longer safe. Whatever protection silence had offered was beginning to fail. As he moved cautiously forward, he heard voices carried by the wind. Hidden among rocks, he saw the Apache woman again, not alone this time. She was guiding 2 children and an elderly man, all exhausted. Her posture remained strong, but fatigue was visible now. She froze when she noticed him. For a moment, trust wavered. The cowboy slowly raised his hands, showing he carried no weapon. He spoke her language poorly, but his intent was clear. He warned her that soldiers were closing in from the south and that the valley route was compromised. There was no time for discussion. The woman made a decision instantly. She asked the cowboy if he knew another way. He did. Few traveled the northern ridge. It was dangerous, narrow, and unforgiving, but it led beyond the soldiers' patrol range. Without hesitation, he offered to guide them. This was no longer about hiding a secret. It was about saving lives. The group moved quickly, the cowboy leading, watching every step, knowing one mistake could mean capture or death. The climb was brutal. The children struggled, the old man slowed, and the wind cut through them like a blade. More than once, the cowboy considered turning back to distract the soldiers, but the woman refused. She would not let him sacrifice himself. Instead, she took the rear position, guarding the group with unwavering resolve. In that moment, the cowboy saw her not as someone in need of help, but as a leader carrying the weight of her people's survival. By nightfall, gunshots echoed in the distance. The soldiers were close. The group reached a narrow ledge overlooking a deep ravine. There was no clear path forward. The cowboy scanned the terrain and spotted an old rope bridge, worn but intact. It was risky, but it was their only chance. One by one, they crossed, the wind shaking the ropes violently. When it was the woman's turn, she paused, looking back toward the sound of pursuit. She knew what she had to do. She handed the cowboy a small carved token, a symbol of her tribe. Without saying a word, she turned back. The realization struck him instantly. She was going to draw the soldiers away. He protested, stepping forward, but she stopped him with a single look. It was not fear in her eyes, but certainty. She disappeared into the darkness, moving toward danger with deliberate calm. The cowboy clenched his fists, knowing that sometimes courage demands letting go. The soldiers followed the false trail. The shots moved farther away, then faded. The cowboy waited until dawn before continuing, guiding the others down into open land beyond the ridge. When they reached safety, the children slept for the first time in days. The old man wept quietly, but the cowboy felt no relief. His thoughts were fixed on the woman who had chosen sacrifice over survival. Days later, while riding alone, he saw a familiar figure ahead on the trail. Bruised, exhausted, but alive, the Apache woman stood waiting. She had survived by blending into the land, using every skill passed down through generations. The moment they saw each other, no words were needed. Relief passed between them like a shared breath. The danger was over. The soldiers had moved on. The path was lost to them forever. They parted without ceremony. She returned to her people. He returned to the open road. Yet neither walked away unchanged. The cowboy carried the token with him, a reminder of the day he learned that heroism does not always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like trust, sacrifice, and standing still when the world demands movement. Years later, stories would spread across the frontier, whispers of a hidden passage, a woman who vanished into mist, and a cowboy who never spoke of what he knew. The truth remained buried in the land, protected by those who understood its value. And somewhere beyond the reach of history, the waterfall continued to fall, guarding a secret that had changed lives without ever asking for recognition.